It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha. Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Brouhaha. I'm sitting here, Marshall Wood, looking across at you-know-who, Dale McKee, ready to Brouhaha.
Are you Marshall Wood?
You doggone right I am.
Well, you look a little bit different.
Why is that?
Well, you got a hat on, a jacket on.
Yeah.
Is it cold to you?
Cold outside.
Okay.
Maybe it's cold outside.
It's cold.
It's supposed to be cold this time of year, ain't it?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Well, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Did you write an article this week?
I did.
Yeah. You don't do that very often, do you?
About once a week.
About once a week for about like 40-something years?
Long time.
Long time. Well, what'd you write about this week, Dale? Surely you got something to talk about. Everything. Well, let's just start with the Army-Navy game. I love watching that thing.
I do too. That last 10 minutes was
Woo! That last minute was a good one. It went down to the wire, man. Mm-hmm. To the wire.
I think I've been watching that game since I was about 10 or 11, 12 years old because my dad was in the Army.
Yeah.
I think I've watched it every year.
My dad was in the Air Force, and they don't have they got a team.
Yeah.
But it ain't the Army.
It's a very good team.
It's a good team.
It was going to a bowl.
But we always, watch that, and, I just love, that always makes me feel good about our country.
Yeah.
It really does. Those guys get out there and they fight it out, man, and they give it all they got, and then it's all over. They ready to take on anybody in the world. I'm proud of that. And how'd that work out? This Army got them.
Army got them.
Army got them. Hell, stood strong at the end.
Yeah. Had to.
Yeah.
I think that guy was about 6 inches from the goal line.
I watched them look at that, and I could not put him in there. And I didn't know. I said, there's no way they can they called him short, right? Mm-hmm. And they were looking, and there was just no way. They couldn't see enough.
Just a pile of mankind there.
Yeah. I mean, he could have crawled in there, I guess. But anyway, that was an exciting deal. And, of course, that kind of paved the way for the activities of the night this weekend on Saturday night with the Heisman Trophy presentation.
Well, I think they gave it to a very deserving young man.
I hate to admit it because he plays at LSU, but I think he's the guy.
He thanked everybody down to the janitors in the building, to the people that turn off the lights. I mean, he was thanking everybody. So, you got to appreciate somebody like that he just understands things,
Yeah.
He understands there's just not the team, it's just not him, but it's everybody,
And he's thankful.
He is.
I wonder if he's going to play in the bowl game. I wonder if he's that thankful. Is he?
Yeah, he's going to play.
Wow.
They're saying that he'll probably be one of the top 5 in the draft.
I'm going to go ahead and spit this out there when we talk about this. Mm-hmm. The first time I remember a player opting out of a bowl game was Jabril Peppers from Michigan several years ago. He was a defensive back. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you that I was upset about that. Mm-hmm. I didn't like this transfer, and I didn't like this getting out, not playing in the bowl games. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I began to think about that. And I went to college.
You did?
I did. And I did not play football in college. But the reason I went to college was to enhance my earning capability.
Okay.
And so when I look at these guys going to play NCAA football, they're there to play football. I don't have a problem with that. They're there to enhance their earning capacity.
Yes.
And so if they opt out of a bowl game, I understand why now. And I can live with that. I used not to like it. But if I was Jaden Daniels and I had won the Heisman, mm-hmm. and I was looking at who knows what kind of a contract he's going to get because he's going to go, where you say they got him projected?
In the top 5.
In the top 5. That's a lot of money. That's $20 million or better, right?
I would think at least.
So would I risk getting hurt in a bowl game? No, sir. I would not. How do you feel about that?
I'm kind of like that. I don't like the fact that they opened the transfer portal. I don't have a problem with that. If they're going pro, I understand that. Because, I know several local players told me one time when they were going to play on like a 500 team and go to a bowl,
Yeah.
they said, I wouldn't have gone to the bowl. I would have started working out toward possibly getting drafted.
Yeah, getting ready for that combine.
Sure. And so, anyway, but I do have a problem with the transfer portal and like the Ohio State quarterback already transferring out
before the bowl game.
and putting his team in a bad spot there and everything like that. And I hate that Bo Nix opted out because he was having he had as good a year as Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
We just didn't hear a lot about him. Yeah. I mean, he had like 40 touchdowns and 5 or 6 interceptions.
Yeah.
Those are the same stats that Jaden had at LSU.
He let Washington take his Heisman away from him. But anyway, listen, that time flies when you're having fun. We're already at 5:42. We got a guest tonight, Dale. Tell us about our guest and what we're going to talk about.
Robbie Faulk. He's going to tell us all about. He's going to fill us in about Mississippi State. Last year we had Jared Reading tell us about Ole Miss, and Robbie's going to tell us about the new coach, football
This
coach.
ought to be good.
Yeah, a little basketball, maybe news and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to have Robbie.
Well, let's don't put it up anymore.
Okay.
Let's take a break here from our sponsor, and then Dale and I'll be right back with Robbie Faulk to talk about Mississippi State after this commercial. See you in a minute.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Robbie Faulk. Robbie, how's the weather in Starkville?
It's beautiful today. We got blue skies. A little chilly. It was 26, 27 degrees this morning. Had a pretty hard freeze last night, but it's a beautiful afternoon here. And Choctaw County is actually where I'm at, but I'm right down the road from Starkville, so I don't think there's going to be a huge change in weather about 30 miles up the road.
There you go. Well, listen, we want you to fill us in about Mississippi State, and a lot's been going on this month. Let's touch base first with the one everybody wants to know. What do you think Jeff Lebby is going to be the answer for Mississippi State?
Well, I think that remains to be seen just until he actually gets on the field and coaches, but I think, I've said this before when I'm thinking about what Mississippi State needs, and you look at kind of where they were and the landscape of college football right now, it really felt like Mississippi State needed a guy that's relatively young, that understands the NIL and transfer portal side of things, and the way that football has kind of moved that in college sports in general. And a guy that could really bring a dynamic, exciting offense to Starkville, because that's something that they've been missing. And I think that's what they got in Jeff Lebby. Now, they didn't get the experience. He has no experience building a program. He has no experience running a program. This is his first time as a head coach. So that is a massive question mark. But if you look at everybody that Mississippi State was after, and you look at the John Summeralls and the Willie Fritzes and guys that Mississippi State was kind of in the game with, to me, Jeff Lebby was the best fit from the culture part of things to what you actually needed for your program moving forward. So to me, he was the best guy for the job. When you start breaking down, who's up for the job there at the end, Jeff Lebby made the most sense. So will he be successful as a head coach? I don't know. But I do know that he brings you something that you desperately needed, and that's somebody that can recruit and that can run an exciting offense. The rest of it, he's got to figure out, and we will see if he's able to do that in the coming years.
Do you know how much difference his offense is and Coach Leach's offense was? Is there? I know it's similar, but it's not the same, is it?
No, not at all. There's certain principles within it that are similar. It kind of, branched off of the air raid in a lot of ways. Art Briles was tied to Mike Leach early on in his career and basically created and advanced this offense, the veer and shoot, that Jeff Lebby has kind of implemented. And it's going to be, there's going to be some similar concepts, but for the most part, pretty different in what they do. There's going to be a lot of shots down the field. The offense itself is going to be really spread out in how they run their formations. Wide receivers are going to be on the far hashes of the football field. He wants to get the defense spread out. And in that sense, I think that it is a lot like the air raid in that you're trying to find open grass for players. You're trying to find room for players to have space. And that's what the air raid did. You were always looking for open grass. But this is going to implement a lot of running as well. So they're not going to throw the ball quite as much as Mike Leach would. They like to run the football in that offense, and they like to take some really deep shots. We didn't see a ton of deep shots down the field with Mike Leach. I think you're going to see a lot more of that with Jeff Lebby. But at the bare bones of it, there are a lot of similarities in what they do. They put a lot of emphasis on the quarterback. They want the quarterback to be accurate first and foremost, and they want the quarterback to make good decisions. And they are looking for players to be open in space. And that's basically, the end all of it is let's try to score a bunch of points. And no matter how you get there, I think they're both on the same page in that regard.
I think this is Marshall. You talking about the quarterback? Didn't y'all just get a new commit at the quarterback position?
They did. They got a commitment from Michael Van Buren from Maryland, a 4-star quarterback out of the high school ranks, and was committed to Oregon, a guy that Jeff Lebby's been recruiting for quite some time. He recruited him at Oklahoma. I think a great fit for this offense. And they also got a commitment from Blake Shapen, who was the quarterback at Baylor, who's played 3 years at Baylor, got a chance to come in this year and potentially be a Mississippi State starter. I know that they're going after another transfer portal guy as well, but he's got secured 2 commitments from quarterbacks, so he's starting to kind of build that room a little bit.
What is the difference? Before I get to the next question, what about Will Rogers? Was that a surprise when he entered the transfer portal? We just thought that we saw a guy that was very loyal to Mississippi State and loved Mississippi State, and I'm sure it was a hard decision for him. And do you know where he may end up?
Yeah, I think it was tough for him. I think there just came a time where Will Rogers wanted something new, and there's a lot of people in this fan base that are ready for something new. I feel like Will was kind of done a disservice this year having to run the offense that he did. I thought it was, before the season, full transparency, I thought it was good for him as a quarterback to be in a different offense to showcase the fact that he could run different offenses because he had been labeled a system quarterback. A lot of people thought the only offense he could run is the air raid. And I think what we saw is that was kind of, Kevin Barbay was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and it just didn't work. And in reality, I do believe the air raid is probably the best offense for him, and they really just didn't do a very good job of utilizing his strengths this past year. I wasn't totally surprised. I just felt like it was probably time for everybody to move on and for him to get a new breath of life somewhere else, for Mississippi State to get a new guy in there as well. I personally, I hate the fact that he didn't get his chance to break the all-time SEC record in passing. That's something that's, going to be a bit of a regret. And, a lot of that was just bad luck with the fact that he got hurt in the middle of the season. That was tough. But he's coming up short there, but he's still going down as a top 5 passer in just about every category in the SEC history. And that, to me, is just remarkable. As far as where he ends up, that's kind of a mystery right now. Washington was a place that had emerged early as a possibility for him. I don't know how big of a factor they are right now, But, that's a place, I believe he visited Miami this past weekend. That's another location he could end up. Right now, there's been nothing concrete one way or the other on where he might eventually land.
I want to kind of change directions on us and go back the other way for a minute, and I appreciate that update on Will. Let's talk about Lebby and his staff. What kind of progress has been made towards his staff that you could know or that you might could share with us, or any thoughts that you have on that?
Yeah, he's basically got all of his on-the-field staff put together at this point, with the exception of one coach. I'm not sure exactly what position this coach is going to have. They do need an outside linebackers coach because it looks like they're going to have two linebackers coaches, and one of them is going to be their defensive coordinator. So that's kind of what they're looking at right now. And then somebody's got to be assigned special teams as well. And right now we don't know what the situation is there. But basically they have one more spot to fill. He is the offensive coordinator, so that's taken care of. But his defensive coordinator is Coleman Hutzler, who was special teams coordinator at Ole Miss, special teams coordinator, I think, at Florida, also coached linebackers at those schools, was at South Carolina, most recently was at Alabama as the linebackers coach there at Alabama in special teams. So, that's the guy's first-time coordinator. Sometimes that's concerning, but sometimes you got, a diamond in the rough there. So we'll see if they're able to get that. But he brought over several people with ties to him on the offensive side of the ball. And he kept two Mississippi State coaches on the field, defensive line coach David Turner and wide receivers coach Chad Bumpus, who are both staples at Mississippi State. Both of those guys stayed on here in Starkville. He kept several off-the-field guys. Greg Knox, who was the interim coach, is staying on to be a part of the off-the-field staff. Jason Washington, who's served in several different roles at Mississippi State. Gary Green as well. Rod Gibson. So a lot of familiar faces and then a lot of new faces out there on the staff.
Well, I tell you what, he's hit the ground running on that. And, you mentioned, you kind of alluded to this in previous comment section, talking about coaching, the things he's got to do that he's never done before. And managing that program, any program in the SEC or that level, that's going to be that's a big pair of britches to put on. He's going to have a lot to get used to, buddy, but I'm sure he'll do fine. Dale, I'll go back over to you. What you got?
Well, as far as recruiting, when Leach was there, he basically recruited to his offense. And so I don't know what happened last year in recruiting, but what I'm saying is that do you think they'll go back to that it's going to be different from last year as far as who they bring in on the offensive side?
I think in some regards, yes, especially at quarterback. It's going to be a guy that is going to fit this style of offense. I don't think that running back and wide receiver would be all that different. I think that they will be able to elevate their offensive skill set positions from what they have been. I think they're going to be able to entice some wide receivers and running backs that have some great offers out there to come to Mississippi State. And if you look at the offenses that he had at UCF and Ole Miss and Oklahoma, those guys are putting up some big numbers, and he's going to have a chance to sell that to recruits. So, I think that he's going to be able to recruit some really good players on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't think the defensive side really changes for Mississippi State, no matter who the coach is. You're always going to have a nice talent pool to draw from inside the state of Mississippi. Linebackers, defensive linemen, defensive backs. I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. But the offense, I think you will see quarterbacks that fit this style of offense a little more, and they should be elevated as far as the wide receivers and running backs and quarterbacks are concerned.
All right, let's move on to basketball for a minute. The men's basketball team had a big win this week over Tulane. I don't say it's a big win, but it was a 30-point win. And so how's the basketball team looking in the before conference play starts. I know they're 7-2. Is that correct? And
Yes, sir.
So anyway, what's your thoughts on basketball so far?
Well, I think they're kind of a finished product right now. They got off to a really good start in the first couple of weeks. They had, a couple of big wins in there against Arizona State, Washington State, Northwestern. And they had a bad week last week, to be honest with you. They lost to Georgia Tech on the road. They lost to, 2 weeks ago, I guess, they lost to Southern University. That was a really bad loss, losing that game at home. And they basically had a week off. And everything that I heard during the week was that the practices were super intense. Chris Jans was demanding a lot from them. And they came out in that ball game in Atlanta against Tulane and were really focused. And Tulane's one of the highest scoring offenses in the country. They run one of the fastest offenses in the country. All 5 starters averaging double figures. And I thought State came into that ball game and was just absolutely locked in. And they kind of turned the tables on Tulane. They scored over 100 points for the first time since 2018. And everybody was kind of hitting on all cylinders. And I think that's the Mississippi State team that could pop up here over time. They need to stack some wins here to finish out non-conference play. But the good news is they're missing their all-SEC and potential player of the year, Tolu Smith, their center. He's been out for the first 9 games, probably going to miss another couple of weeks here. But when he gets back, this team looks a lot different, having a guy like that in the post. So as non-conference play starts to wind down here over the next 2 or 3 weeks, if Mississippi State can get him back in the game here, I think they can make a serious run and have a really good conference schedule.
What's your thoughts on the Lady Bulldogs so far?
They're kind of up and down right now, and kind of similar in that they just have not had their full team together. The last 2 ball games have been rough. They lost both of those ball games to Miami and then Chattanooga after starting the year 8-0. And, the Miami game was just Miami is on the cusp of the top 25. They've had a good start to the year. And Mississippi State was missing its top 2 post players, actually top 3 post players in that game, and just didn't have the size. They were in the ball game in the final minutes, and they ended up losing 74-68 at home against Miami, and that was a tough loss. But then you go to Chattanooga, you're missing your top 2 post players again. You had an opportunity there and just dropped the ball against them. So they've got to regroup. They're playing, as we record, they're playing on Monday night against Kennesaw State, and they have a chance to bounce back here. But you got, I think, 4 or 5 games left in non-conference play. They really need to get back on track here. And I think they're going to get healthy here in the next couple of weeks, and that should help. But they're definitely putting themselves behind the 8 ball here after these last 2 losses.
Okay. All right, listen, can you give us just a quick preview of what's going on with Bulldog baseball?
Yeah, we'll wait and see on it, and we got to see, how this new coach, that's the pitching coach, does this year. That's obviously a huge topic. In the offseason, Mississippi State had to get better pitching, one of the worst seasons they've ever had. Pitching last year, and they've got to be significantly better this year, or it's going to be the end of the Chris Lemonis era. He can't put 3 straight seasons up like he has the last 2 years. So they got a pretty easy non-conference schedule. They got a chance to build some wins there in non-conference play. I mean, Southern Miss is going to be probably the toughest team that they meet in non-conference play. And that game's in Pearl, always a competitive ball game there. Other than that, I mean, it's just not going to be a very difficult schedule. But you get into SEC play, and it's one of the toughest they've had in a while. So they've got to build some momentum in that non-conference portion of the schedule, get some pitchers up to speed and some of these young guys. I feel like the hitting is going to be pretty good. Defense should be much better, but pitching is going to be where it all boils down.
Listen, I kind of told you this a little earlier. This is Marshall again, and we're out of time, Robbie. We appreciate you and what you bring to our table and share with us about Mississippi State. We really appreciate you being with us today.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys.
I'm going to ask you to hold on just a minute. Dale and I are going to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be back with tonight's final segment of the Brouhaha after this commercial.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everybody, to tonight's final segment of the Brouhaha. I enjoyed talking to Robbie. He did a good job.
He did.
Yeah.
He was very informative.
Yeah, he's a Mississippi State guy. He knows what's happening, and that's what we need. You managed to get the guys that's in the know, Dale.
Well, he doesn't live but 30 miles from it. He's probably been a Bulldog fan his whole life.
Probably his whole life. Mm-hmm. Listen, a couple of things. You mentioned this in your view, in your sideline view, but pretty big contract came up in sports this weekend. I noticed you mentioned that $700 million for a pitcher. 10 years.
No, he's a pitcher hitter. He's multiple players.
Oh, okay. Well,
he can pitch
and hit. Can he hit his own pitches? He ought to be able to for $700 million.
Nobody can hit his pitching, and I don't know of any pitcher that can shut him down.
Man, he's like a dream come true, isn't he?
He's about 6'5".
Man,
he's a big old boy.
He's the largest ever to be signed in baseball, surpassing Mike Trout's 12-year, $426 million contract.
$12 million?
$426 million.
Oh, 426.
Yeah. Did I say 12?
Listen, that's probably the biggest in
It was
sport.
a 12-year, $426 million contract with the Los Angeles Angels, according to CBS Sports. Now, that's not Dale McKee, but that's pretty good.
Well, I would have to agree with CBS Sports, but no, that's the biggest in sports of any kind, anywhere.
It's funny you should mention that.
Okay.
Because I did come up with some other big contracts in sports.
Oh, really?
And I think you're right. But you're going to see, I think we can see just how many big sports contracts are out there. Of course, this gentleman's got the $700 million one. Cristiano Ronaldo is a soccer player.
Yeah.
He got a $536 million contract for 2.5 years.
For 2.5 years?
Yeah. So how does that sound compared to the other fellow?
It sounds like I'd rather be a soccer player.
The other guy got more money, but it's over 10 years. This guy gets his over 2.5. The Portuguese soccer player earns $214.5 million a year alone as captain of Saudi Arabia's Al Nassr team. Patrick Mahomes got a $450 million contract. That's 10 years. That's football players, $45 million a year. Karim Benzema, a soccer player, $436 million for 2 years. Mike Trout, $426 million for 12. We talked about that a while ago. That's the one that got surpassed. Canelo Alvarez, boxing, $365 million for 5 years. Mookie Betts, baseball, $365 million. Aaron Judge, baseball, $365. Kids, you might want to learn to play baseball. Most of these guys are baseball players, Dale.
Oh, really?
Man, well, you hearing it?
Well, no, I felt like soccer were some of the highest paid.
Well, out of this bunch right here, it's the baseball, boxing, baseball, soccer, football, and then soccer. So you're pretty close. The biggest by sport.
Yeah.
By sport. Of course, the $700 million is the biggest major league baseball contract. The biggest NBA contract, Jaylen Brown, $304 million for 5 years.
Who's Jaylen Brown?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But he's the richest. You got the biggest NBA contract anybody ever got. We don't even know who he is. Boy, talk about a mess.
I remember when the Louis, it wasn't Louis Dampier. The guy from Lawrence County, Dampier, played basketball at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
He signed with Dallas Mavericks, something like back in the day, for $50 million. That was one of the biggest contracts ever.
Man.
And that was just $50 million.
Just 50.
Yeah, and that was probably 20 years ago, maybe 30.
Talking about money, listen to this.
Okay.
Now, I don't know
Yeah.
if this is true,
Yeah.
but that's never stopped me from,
Yeah.
but I give that caveat. Marvin Harrison Jr., have you read the deal they're trying to put together for him to keep him at Ohio State?
No.
NIL deal. I found this on several places on the internet, but they're talking $20 million to keep him come back next year. And they're talking about if that happens, that changes once again everything in college football. What do you think about that?
That's outrageous.
Outrageous.
It's not fair.
It's not any more outrageous than the $700 million.
I think every college team ought to be able to afford any player out there, but it's getting to where you can't.
Oh, exactly. Now, that's an interesting point. You're looking for parity.
No, I'm looking for a fair.
Isn't that what parity means?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Parity to me means everybody finishes 500.
Yeah.
Like in the NFL. I mean, the Saints are in first place.
No,
they got a losing record. You want parity? Go to New Orleans.
I'm saluting. I'm taking my hat off and giving you a nod. That's a good shot, partner. That's a good shot. Well, listen, we're about out of time, and we got other things, big issues in sports. Have the All-Star games outlived their usefulness? NCAA rules on paying college athletes working out. It's a wreck, but it's fun, and we have a good time. We love sports, don't we?
Well, good thing about it, we can do it again next week.
Well, let's plan on doing that. But for now, it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Get us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.